Welcome back to the GCN News Show, which this week comes to you direct from Reed's Hotel in the heart of Mallorca. Coming up on the show today, we look back at another epic edition of Milan San Remo, plus we wrap up the other one-day races which took place last week. We also have a mini tribute to Fabian Cancellara, a look at our GCN Strava Club, our CAPTION competition winner, plus our usual tech and tweet of the week. The first monument of the year took place on Sunday in Italy in the form of Milan San Remo. And whilst the riders didn't face the snow and sleet of last year, conditions really were far from ideal. Rain was pouring on them from the start and temperatures reached as low as 2 degrees as they went over the Ticino Pass. An early break of 7 riders forged clear after 4 kilometres, and behind the peloton was controlled predominantly by the Cannondale team of Peter Sagan. By the time they reached the Cipressa, the group was already whittled down to around about 80 riders, and it was Vincenzo Nibali of Astana who was the first to make his move. On the descent, he caught and dropped the remaining breakaway riders and eventually forged a lead of almost a minute over the chasing bunch. However, with Lotto Belisol, Team Sky, Trek and Cannondale all chasing behind, that lead was cut to just 14 seconds by the time they started the last test of the day, the Poggio. Fireworks were expected up that last climb. However, barring Gregory Rast of Trek and Battaglin of Bardiani, there really were no attacks, and over the top there's a group of around 25 still together. And amongst that group were some of the leading sprinters: Mark Cavendish, winner in 2009, Andre Greipel, Peter Sagan and last year's winner, Gerald Ciolek. Everyone was waiting with huge anticipation for the finish, and in the end it was Alexander Kristoff of Katusha who took his first victory in the race, and in fact the first ever Norwegian victory at Milan San Remo. A hugely disappointed Fabian Cancellara finished in second place, whilst a very happy Ben Swift of Team Sky was the third place on the podium. We all know that Fabian Cancellara is one of the best classics riders of all time. However, recently his consistency was highlighted by the Irish statistician Cillian Kelly. Yes, over the last 4 years, Fabian has finished 10 of the monuments in cycling. And of those 10 finishes, he's been on the podium 10 times. It's an incredible feat, particularly given how complicated Milan San Remo is. Rui Quinta took the time to construct this montage of the podium places. And there were plenty of other one-day races which took place across Europe last week, so here's a quick roundup of who won what. In the Grand Prix Nobili, it was Simone Ponzi of Neri Sottili who took his third victory of the season. Meanwhile, in the Hans Armour Classic, it was Luka Mezec who took his first victory of the season for Giant Shimano. In Knocker, of course, there was a local victory for Kenny de Haas of Lotto Belisol, who just edged out Tom van Asbroek of Topsport Vlaanderen. However, Van Asbroek went one better a few days later by winning the Grand Prix Cholet, whilst Emma Johansson of Sweden won the women's event. And finally, 21-year-old neo-pro Alexis Guigar of AG2R took his first pro victory at the Classic Loire Atlantique on Saturday. Our tech of the week comes from Dutch company Fietsclick, founded by 5 friends who were looking for a simpler way to carry a crate of beer by bike. They developed the Click adapter, which attaches to most pannier racks, and from there they've made accessories like crates, bags and baby seats, all of which lock into place using the Click platform to transport your items safely. They launched a fundraising page on Kickstarter, and despite already reaching their goal of raising $40,000, you can still back them to help them produce more units, features and colours. If you want more information, the link is in the description below this video. On to our CAPTION competition now, and last week we showed you this photo of Fabian Cancellara trying to ride away from what looks like a stalker up the 30% gradients which met them at the end of stage 5 of Tirreno. And our winner is Fred Manning, who said this: "Come back, I didn't catch the end of your phone number." Well done, Fred. Send us your address and we'll send you a GCN water bottle. Meanwhile, this week's picture is taken by Tim Dewala at Milan San Remo. And believe it or not, underneath all of this clothing and helmet is Luca Paolini. Send your captions in by writing them below this video. On to our Strava club now, and there are some familiar names at the top of the leaderboards. Longest distance ridden once again goes to Cycle Dr. 1 with 1,137 kilometres. And Cormac Keeney again has the most amount of climbing with just over 28 kilometres. Yes, 28,000 metres. Meanwhile, the longest ride was an incredible 608.7 kilometres, and that was done by Gary van der Merwe, who did an Audax near Johannesburg in South Africa. On to tweet of the week now, which comes from David Millar, who pretty much summed up how tired he and probably the rest of the peloton were after Sunday's Milan San Remo. He put up this picture simply saying, "Saw this mini escalator and thought, what an amazing creation. Thank you for existing." Coming up on the channel this week, well, on Monday we've already released the first of our Campagnola maintenance series, where we showed you how to replace a cassette on their wheels. On Wednesday we show you how to make your bike more aerodynamic using tips from the pros and their mechanics at the Dubai Tour. On Thursday there's a surprise, not just for you but also for us. Channel editor Mike, all that good stuff, Reese, has got something in his pocket and we're looking forward to seeing what it is just as much as you are. On Friday we take you on a tour of the Colnago factory, and finally on Saturday we take a close look at the Swift bike used by the Australian Drapac professional cycling team. Well, that's about all we've got time for this week, but join us again next week where we'll be looking back at the Vuelta a Catalunya, the first point of the season where Contador and Froome meet ahead of the Tour de France in July. And we'll also be looking at the first couple of cobbled classics that took place up in Belgium. Thanks for joining us, we'll see you again next week.
Into the lock ring and fit your lever to the tool. Have both tools pointing upwards so that you can squeeze them together. This makes it easier to keep hold of both the chain whip and the cassette tool. Carefully apply pressure